Welcome to Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Geri Simon, a League member and your host. Each week we talk about issues that are important to elections. We hope to inspire you to talk to your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors about those issues. And most important, when election time comes around, we want to help you be ready and willing to go vote. Last time we talked with Valerie Stoj, the Public Relations Coordinator for the Douglas County Election Commission, about the process of registering to vote. And today we want to talk with her again. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you.
And we would like to talk about the voting process. What do we actually do when we go to vote in an election? So let's start with, I'm registered to vote. And an election's coming up. What are the steps to actually voting?
Okay. Well, I think the thing that's most important for voters to understand is that there's really only one ballot in the city that's appropriate for them to vote, and that's the one that elects the officials that represent them. So we wouldn't vote for the governor of Kansas because we don't live there. So therefore, we should vote for the school board members and the city council person and those folks that represent our local area. And the only way to do that is to go to the correct polling place. So ways to ensure that you're all registered to vote at the correct location is, if you think an election is coming, is just to verify the dates. You can do that by contacting our office or tuning into the local media. There'll probably be lots of discussion of when the election is. Then when you have those dates, consider your own personal calendar. Are you going to be in town and you want to vote at your polling place on election day? Or do you want or need to vote early and have that ballot mailed to your house or come to our office to vote it early? If so, that's perfectly fine. And then the third thing I'd recommend all voters do prior to every election is just be sure all your information is correct in our system. Did you move and didn't tell us? If you live in an apartment building and you moved across the hall, even that change has to be registered with our office. Is your political party affiliation what you'd like it to be for a closed primary election? All those sorts of things. If you ensure that you're ready for the election, your information is correct, you'll really be set for any election.
Okay. And if you've never gone to your polling place before, or you just don't remember what it is, you can contact the Election Commission office?
Definitely. You can either call our office, or our website has a really easy way to find your polling place. Our office telephone number is 402-444-VOTE, which translates to 8683. We're always happy to help voters, but the more in advance of election you call, the less time your wait probably will be, because as you can imagine, our office gets very busy prior to elections, especially on election day. Sometimes the hold times are long because there's a lot of people calling. So if you can call us a week or two in advance, that would be great. Or you can use our website, which is votedouglascounty.com. Just put in a couple pieces of your address information, and it will not only tell you what your polling place is, but even show you a picture of what the building looks like.
Wonderful. So you've got the election date, you know when the election is, you know you're going to go vote. If you're going to vote on election day, and you're able to, what are the hours of voting on election day?
Good question. Those are determined by state statute, and so in the central time zone, they're open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And all election office or polling places will be open during those hours.
Okay. Now, what if I'm in line and the clock ticks and it's 8 p.m. and I've still got a line of voters and I haven't been able to vote yet? What happens?
Good question. As long as you're in line at 8 p.m., the polling place will stay open as long as it takes to service all those voters.
Okay. Now, election day is always a Tuesday.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And what if a person, their job commitment, the hours that they work, it's really difficult for them to physically get to the polling place on election day? Their options are, you mentioned, early voting or absentee voting?
It's called early voting in Nebraska.
Okay.
A lot of people use the term absentee. That used to be a terminology. And in fact, in Nebraska, until 2000, you had to verify that you physically couldn't vote on election day. You either had an illness or travel plans or something. Now, thank heavens that has been eliminated, and people don't have to have any reason at all to vote early. I always kind of joke with folks and say, if you just don't like to leave your house on a Tuesday, that's a good enough reason to vote early. And there's two options for early voting. People can either do it in person at our office. Our office is the only location that early voting is available in Douglas County. But then you can also have a ballot mailed to you. either to your home, or if you're not going to be at your home but another address, we'll mail it anywhere in the United States. So if you're traveling on business for a long term, if you have a vacation home in another part of the country, if you're a college student and you want to maintain your registration in Douglas County, but we can mail it to your dorm, all of those options are available.
Okay. And if you prefer to just come in person and do that, where is your office?
Good question. Our actual address is 225 North 115th Street. So from 114th and Dodge, we're 2 blocks south of Dodge and 1 block west of 114th. So we're a long one-story building with the American flag out front, and our office hours are 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays.
Okay. Plenty of parking, I'm assuming, and can you reach you by bus?
It gets a little close, the parking,
okay.
The closer we get to the election, but we try to have as much available as possible. And there is a bus stop about 2 blocks away from our office.
Okay, so that's a good option for people too, who don't have transportation of
Definitely.
their own. Okay, wonderful. So now I'm ready to actually vote, and I've decided if I'm going to vote early, and I'm mailed a ballot, obviously that's a paper ballot. Is that correct?
It is, and I just want to talk a minute about how you can request that ballot be mailed to you.
Good.
We need to have all requests for early voting ballots by mail in writing, accompanied by the voter's signature, just so we verify that it is that voter that's requesting the ballot. So that can either be faxed to our office, mailed, or emailed, a scan of the form and their signature provided to us. The earliest those forms can be submitted is 120 days in advance of the election. The last day they can be submitted is the Wednesday before the election.
So 4 months before, you can ask for a ballot to be mailed to you.
Right. And again, that's in state statute. That's not something. And then we begin to mail the ballots 35 days prior to the election.
Okay. And so there is can you hand write a request, or do you have to fill out a form?
No, there's not. There is a form just to help make sure you provide the information that we request. But no, we joke that someone could, in theory, fill out a napkin and give us their name, their address, their date of birth, the address to which they'd like to have that ballot mailed, and their signature. That's so important. And get that to our office, and we would process it.
Okay, great. So that request, once the ballot is mailed, how does the person have to fill it out with a special pen or pencil?
They don't. We just ask them to use, blue or black ink, something.
Okay.
We use optical scanning, computerized machines to read the ballots. And so I'm not sure if it would be used, pink gel pen or that sort of thing, just using common sense to do something that the machine could easily read.
Okay, so the ballot comes back to your office, and then you count it by entering it into the optical scanner so that it's that scans the ballot and counts the vote the way they voted.
Right.
Okay.
And when people return an early voting ballot, there's always a place on the envelope for the voter to sign. And again, that just ensures that it's them casting the ballot. And we can't count ballots that don't have the voter's signature on it. So it's really important that voters review that envelope and sign where indicated.
So they're not signing the ballot.
Correct.
They're signing the envelope that the ballot is being mailed back.
Right. And when those ballots are counted in our office, the envelope and the ballot are separated. So no one ever links the two together and we don't know how people voted. We just know whether or not they participated in the election.
And that would be important to a lot of people to know that the privacy of the secrecy of the polling booth is preserved even with early voting.
Yes, and that is a state requirement. So if there are people that just are really uncomfortable with that, then perhaps early voting is just not an option for them, and then we'd recommend that they vote at the polls.
Okay. But an early voter can also, if they don't want to put the ballot in the mail, you can take your ballot and bring it into your office. Is that correct?
They can, or what's more convenient is we have 5 drop boxes located throughout the county. They look somewhat like a mailbox, only they're painted white, and it says official election equipment on it. And those are located throughout the county, one of which is in front of our building. Those are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they don't require any postage. We have staff that pick those ballots up from there every weekday, and then they're directly transported back to our office.
And the boxes that are located throughout the city are they at specific locations, like libraries?
They are. The 3 of them are at library branches, so they're at the Charles Drew Library in North Omaha, the library on the Metro campus in South Omaha. The library in Millard wasn't quite as far west as we'd like to have it, so we have that one at the Millard Public Schools Foundation office, and then the library in Elkhorn.
Okay.
Are the 4 locations.
And I'm assuming anyone can go to your website and find the actual addresses and directions as to
Yes.
how to find those boxes.
Definitely.
Then. Okay, great. So then let's talk about if you're actually going to come in and vote then on Election Day.
Okay.
What happens when you get to your polling place? Take us through all the steps of
Certainly.
voting.
And one thing maybe to point out to people is they can't do any electioneering when they go to their polling place to vote. So we would ask that people not wear any clothing or stickers or something like that that would be promoting a candidate. If they do, we ask them to probably remove that if possible, just because we don't want to have undue influence for anyone, for any candidate over another.
And that leads to another question before we get to to voting. If I go vote at my polling place, do I need to be worried about anybody approaching me to vote for a particular candidate or a ballot issue or something like that?
There is a zone around a polling place where signs are not permitted, but outside of that, you probably were going to see a lot of signs for candidates.
Okay.
People trying to make that last-minute influence on a voter. So it's possible you might see a lot of signs. I don't know that many candidates have the luxury of deploying actual volunteers to polling places, because in any election, when there's over 200 polling places throughout Douglas County. So if that were a statewide race, or a countywide race, that would be a lot of places to try to staff people.
Okay, but there's a buffer, a zone where they don't,
definitely.
No one's allowed to approach you
Right.
To talk about who to vote for.
And when you get assigned your polling place, it will be a public building. Typically, they might be a school, it might be a church. We've even reached out to some businesses. We're looking for a place that has adequate parking, that meets ADA requirements as far as entry for people who might have trouble walking and disabilities, so it'd be accessible for them. But it'll be a public building in close proximity to where they live.
Okay. So it's Election Day, found my polling place, I'm walking in the door or wheeling in the door, able to get into the entrance there. What happens next?
Certainly. You'll greet a group of hopefully friendly and helpful election workers, and there'll be 2 pairs of them at a table, and they'll have what we call books. One of them is a list of all the voters that are registered for that polling place, and then another will just have some blank pages in it. So there's a check and balance for every voter that comes in. We find their name in the polling book, and then the voter will be asked to sign. Again, we always do double checks with signatures that we have on file, and then the 2 election workers will work together to then write that voter's name in the other book, and even what time they came in to vote, and then that will tell them what ballot they receive. So then that pair of election workers will tell another pair which ballot they receive, and that in a primary would depend upon what political party they're registered, or it might just be, sometimes we have more than one polling place within more than one precinct, in a polling place. And so we just want to be absolutely sure that the voter receives the correct ballot based on their address. You'll be given a ballot, and it might be consistent of more than the page, but we still count that as one ballot. Okay. And then they'll be given a hard plastic, what we call a privacy sleeve. And it's the same size as a ballot, and that's really just to ensure the voter's privacy. Then they'll be directed to polling places, or voting booths, that are just temporary partitions that are set up so that they're at a comfortable height for voters. There'll be pencils in the booths. People can take as long as they need to vote their ballot. Often there's races on both the front and the back of the pages, so we want to be sure that people vote in as many races as they can. One thing that's important is that voters can vote for as few elections as they wish. There's no need that you have to vote in every race. If you only want to vote in 1 or 2 or all but 1, your votes will count in all of the ones that you do vote. That's called undervoting. Now, you can't overvote. So if a race is vote for 1 and you vote for 2 candidates, your vote won't count for that. But you can undervote, meaning you don't have to vote for as many candidates or as many races as possible.
Okay.
Then after you vote that ballot, you'll slip it into the privacy sleeve, and then you'll give it to another set of election workers, and they'll actually deposit it into the ballot box for you.
And you can watch them do that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're in the voting booth and you need assistance, let's say something's confusing you or pencil or whatever, are we using pen or are we using pencil?
Pencils in the voting
Pencils in the
booths.
voting booths, okay. Something is confusing to you. How do you ask for assistance, or can you get assistance when you're voting?
There is the option to request assistance. Usually that doesn't, it usually is someone perhaps that's having a challenge with the language, or maybe they're visually impaired, that sort of thing. Election workers really aren't able to, answer questions about a particular issue that might be on the ballot or a candidate. But there is the option to have either an election worker help you, or sometimes a voter will bring someone with them, a family member or a friend, to assist them to vote. The other thing that's great is that Nebraska has invested in what we call automark machines. And so those are devices that will read the ballot to someone who's visually impaired, or for perhaps whom English isn't their first language, that can either have a magnified version of the ballot show up on a screen, or it will read the ballot to them through headphones. And then the voter can indicate which candidate they'd like to vote for. And all that machine does is mark the ovals for them. We kind of joke that it's a big pencil. It doesn't store any votes whatsoever, so there's no confidentiality breach. So when a ballot has run through an automark, it comes out and goes into the ballot box just like any other, and you virtually cannot tell whether the voter voted with the automark or with their own. But what that provides is for people that are visually impaired, they can have a private vote. No one can know how they voted, even a friend or a family member, for really the first time. And for a lot of people, that's very important.
Okay. And are there any restrictions on things that you can have in the polling booth with you? So, for example, we often see people with our League of Women Voters voters guides, and they're standing in lines at the polls, and they're looking at the last minute trying to decide which way they're going to vote.
Certainly, no, that's perfectly fine.
They can take those in there
And in
with them.
fact, voters can even see a sample of what their ballot will look like by going to our website. And we encourage people to study that ballot, maybe go ahead and mark it in the comfort of your home when you have plenty of time. Mark it however you want, and then you can bring that with you to the voting booth, transfer your marks from your sample to your official ballot. We would just ask people take with them anything that they take into the booth, because you don't want to influence that next voter that comes along behind you.
Right. And it's for parents who have children along with them, either need to bring them with them on election day, or also want to bring them along so that they can understand what the civic duty of voting is all about. Is it okay to bring children in the voting booth with you?
It is. We would just ask that parents use their best judgment. We wouldn't want children that are going to be disruptive to the other voters, because again, everyone's there to do their civic duty, but probably also have busy schedules. And some ballots are really long, and some of the constitutional issues are pretty in-depth, that we want to be sure that we have lots of peace and quiet so people can really concentrate. So if it's children that are able to not be disruptive and be respectful of others around them, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. And when you go in the voting booth, there's no time limit, is there, on the amount of time that you can be there making your decision on how you're voting and marking your ballot?
No. So if you're someone that needs to really study the issues and be sure that you're voting the way that you want to, you can feel free to take as much time as you need.
And if you're a voter, as you mentioned, you have to be ADA accessible, so if someone has a disability, is there ability to, if you need to sit to vote in the booth, is that an option?
Yes, very good question.
Okay.
In some polling places, certainly in our office, we do even have a specially designed voting booth that's at chair height. So if people need to sit, they can have that option to do so.
Okay, great. So, and here we do not use voting machines. Some people may have come from other states where they use machines, or they have punch cards, and we just have the paper ballot that you use the pencil on.
We do. The Secretary of State, again, being the chief election official for the state, is the person or the office that determines the method of voting. And that office has chosen that it will be paper ballots, and given the expense and things that would be involved in transferring to any other process, I would guess that we'll probably remain with paper ballots for the foreseeable future.
Okay. So one term that people might have heard of going to the polling booth that can be confusing is, what if you're told that your ballot is a provisional ballot? What does that mean?
Certainly. The reasons why someone would vote a provisional ballot, the primary one is that they have moved within the county and didn't update their registration prior to the election. The other reason might be that you requested an early voting ballot, and either it didn't get to you, or it got lost, or you voted incorrectly. Something like that has happened. So really, voters, the majority of voters can avoid having to vote a provisional ballot by making sure their information is updated prior to the election. If they've moved within the county, they can vote a provisional ballot. But if they, with Sarpy County being so close and Washington and other counties, if they are registered in a different county and didn't update their registration prior to the election, they are not eligible to vote in the election at all. You have to be within the correct county to vote provisionally. And what that means is they'll receive the same ballot as any other voter at their polling place. It's just that in addition to voting the ballot, they need to complete a voter registration form at the time they vote and another form that's included. And then your ballot is placed in a special envelope and it's just set aside. And then starting the day after the election, our staff go through every one of those registrations that accompany those ballots just to be sure that we get the person's information updated and that they voted at the correct polling place.
Okay. And that's important because, as you said, they need to have the correct ballot as well as being correctly registered.
Right.
To vote.
So they can't, we encourage voters, they might think, oh, well, this other polling place is just down the street from where I work. Why can't I go vote there? Or this is where I voted for the last 10 years. Yes, I moved, but I still want to go back there. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Okay. The other thing that might be a little bit confusing to people is the differences between primary elections and general elections, and how political parties, how your registration is affected by that. So could you talk about the differences between those two kinds of elections?
Certainly. In general, I shouldn't use that word. As an overview, a primary election is a nominating election. Now there's a couple of entities in Douglas County that actually use it as their electing information, or their electing election. But in general, that's a nominating election. So you may have 5 people from one political party vying for a seat. And what that primary election does is narrow down the number of candidates. So then a general election is the actual election where someone is elected to the office. In Nebraska, state statute requires that the primary elections, those held first in May, are closed, meaning that if you're registered as a political party, you can only vote for the candidates that are the same political party as you if they're running for a partisan seat, meaning their political party matters for holding the seat.
Okay.
Now,
so give us an example of
certainly,
an office that would be
so
true.
Governor, Congress, those are, a lot of those are any county office, county sheriff, county treasurer, all of those are partisan offices, meaning the political party of the candidate matters. Now, legislature, school board, all of those, public utilities, those are all nonpartisan offices. So the person's political party isn't considered in the election process.
Okay. So if you go to vote then in a primary, you're given a ballot based on how your party registration.
Correct, correct. So a nonpartisan voter can always vote in a partisan election. It just might be that the only candidates on their ballot would be those running for nonpartisan offices.
Okay, so that's different than some states that have an open, what's called an open primary.
Okay. Now to make it even more confusing, political parties have the choice for every election to open up their ballot to nonpartisan voters. For example, in 2014, both the Democrat Party and the Libertarian Party chose to open their ballots to nonpartisan voters. The Republicans did not. So a nonpartisan voter could go to the polls and say, I'd like to vote the Democrat ballot. They would be given that. But if they went to the polls and said, as a nonpartisan, said, I'd like to vote the Republican ballot, that would not be something they could do because they did not choose to open their ballot. So really we advise people, really of any political party, look at the candidates, see who you really want to vote for, and then if you want to change your party affiliation, now with online voter registration, it's very simple. And if maybe a month before the election, really decide which slate of candidates you'd most like to vote for, and then you can change your affiliation to align with that.
Okay, so and that's to say, what would be the deadline then before the election to change that party affiliation?
The third Friday before the election is the most universal date. That's the way to change it really by any other way other than coming in person to our office. So they could send us a form, they could register online, any number of ways they can change their party affiliation. If they wait until the week of the second Friday before the election, then they have to come in person to our office to do that.
Okay. And there's no limitation on the number of times that you can change that affiliation?
As often as they need to.
Okay. So then you have the general election, and then that's the same ballot based on where you're living.
Correct. Everyone receives the same ballot at the polling place.
Okay. And special elections, do we ever have those, and does a party affiliation matter in those, a special election?
No, a special election is any time a political subdivision needs to have an election that's not timed to coincide with the statewide election. Oftentimes it's a financial matter, maybe a levy override or a bond issue for a school district, a constitutional amendment or charter amendment change for a city, that type of thing.
Okay.
And those typically don't have any political affiliation. The political entity determines the timing of it. The Election Commission determines the method, whether it's done by mail or by polling place.
Okay. So we've gone through all voting, and then at the end, you've given your ballot to the election worker you've watched them put it in the ballot box for you, and then do you get that little sticker that says I voted?
You can, absolutely. I voted today. It's important to a lot of people.
Okay, it is. And do you let children have those if they go with their parents as well?
If it would be the parents' choice. We want to be very responsible with taxpayer dollars, and so we just make sure we're not being wasteful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Valerie, for taking us through that entire process of voting. It's really very easy, simple. I think the Election Commission tries to make it as easy as possible for people. Anything else that you'd like people to know about the voting process in Douglas County?
We're always open to feedback. We just really encourage voters to check their information prior to the election. They can avoid a provisional ballot and just lots of time waiting in line or waiting on the phone if they just check their information a couple weeks prior to the election.
Great. Okay. Thank you again for being with us to get us through that process of what it takes to vote in Douglas County.
Certainly, my pleasure.
So thank you. So for the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Geri Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues, discuss those issues with your friends, your families, and coworkers, and when election time rolls around, go vote, Omaha.